am, people. Man, I'm freaking bummed. Okay, so I was getting shit from some of my viewers that I was a dumbass for believing we landed on the moon. And anyone that watches me or follow me knows that I am a anti-government. I always say question government. I always say never, believe government without verifying. Government will lie. Government has agendas every day. Government wastes money. You can't believe government. So I am, I guess, in theory, your government conspiracy guy. But I think I was like 7 or 9. I was 9 years old or something when this thing happened. So it wasn't like I was paying a whole bunch of attention, but the country was like really mesmerized, and it was really cool. And then I went in the military at 17, and, patriotism, serving my country, all this crap. So I never really questioned this, really the most monumental achievement of mankind. And when I started getting shit from my viewers, my immediate reaction is, oh man, you guys are freaking kooks, whatever. I mean, come on, there's no way you get this many people. There had to be thousands of people. Government can't keep a freaking secret when 3 of them know it, much less thousands. So I kind of wrote it off. And then somebody told me to watch this video. And it's called American Moon English Version. And it's 3.5 hours. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? And I was like, look, I was an investigator, detective, whatever you want to call it. I've read thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pages of evidence and statements, etc. So I understand what it's like to do an investigation, and I've never really investigated this. So I said, let me check out this video and kind of watch it. Well, shit. So according to this slide, 18% of 18 to 34 don't believe we went to the moon. 8% of 35 to 54 don't believe. And only 3% of over 54, because they've lived with it and we've accepted it to become our truth. I always say, look, when you question someone's belief system, you're going to get a visceral, automatic protection reaction. That's why as a cop, you have to be very careful with dealing with people. You don't want to challenge their belief system. You automatically lose credibility. They don't want to hear anything else you say, and they tend to shut you down. So I didn't want to be that guy, so I watched this video. And I used to be in this big percent that believed it, and now I think I'm in the 3% that don't believe it. And, I mean, look, I can't even believe I'm saying it. I mean, it really just freaking, like, shattered my belief system for 50 years that there's no way the government could pull this off. And now, shit. So in this 3-hour movie here, I'm going to try and do a few explaining the things that kind of I can't get past. And then if you want to go watch it. Now, look, I think they did a fantastic job in this because they didn't try to sell you we did or we didn't. They simply said, if this is true, then how do you explain this? And if this is true, how do you explain this? And to me, that's fair. And as an investigator, I was like, okay, I might be able to write that one off. That one, yeah, I could still come up. And I can still come up with some questions that lead me to believe this had to be a huge conspiracy. There had to be so many people involved, and it had to go to the top levels of government. However, the gains for this lie is also huge. And the money and the continued government funding and the bragging rights and the propaganda value. Our government uses propaganda all the time. They use it on the U.S. citizens to make us believe that we're great, good, and we're the greater good. All governments do that. They tell you who the enemy is. One man patriot is another man's terrorist. So one man's freedom fighter is another man's, terrorist. So it's just the way that governments will use their people to try to push their agenda. And I already know that. But when I was, 10, viewing this and seeing it, it didn't have the impact And I never really looked into it till I watched this 3.5 hour video. And I watched the full video. And after about an hour and 45 minutes, I was like, you got to be shitting me. And so let's go through this, and I'm just going to go try to make this as short as possible to get people to go watch this. I also want my viewers, before I lose you, because I'm probably going to lose a lot of people. I probably already lost a lot of people. To try and get the behavior panel to review this video of the 3 astronauts that landed on the moon. And I mean, I'm telling you, if you just, Apollo 11 press conference. So these 3 guys did the greatest task in the history of mankind. And this interview, which I have never watched, I may have saw it when I was a kid, but I never watched it. And I went back and watched the whole video, and this video, and this not, you know, this is an hour and 23-minute video, but I think they only put the camera on these guys maybe 30 minutes, maybe only 20 minutes. And the body language and the deception, and this guy flat effect, raising his hands to his ears and mouth almost constantly every time they talk. This guy is the primary speaker. They all have different reactions. When one cracks a joke, one will laugh and the other one will not laugh. I just see so much conflicted behavior when I watched this video that this alone, if I watch this, makes me question whether or not these guys were on the moon. Just watching this interview. Because I'm telling you, as a cop, all these guys would be guilty. I'd be like, oh, you guys are going on the freaking box. You're taking a lie detector test because I don't believe any damn thing you're saying. You can't keep eye contact. You're looking away. Your hands are always fidgeting. You've got a withdrawn body. You're always moving your arms close to your body. I mean, these guys' body language just scream deception, lies, misbeliefs, misdirection. This is like the worst. And it's funny because I had never watched this video, and then I rolled down to the comments, and the number 1 comment, I've seen happier guys at a funeral. Remember, these guys this is their first conference. They just got back from the moon. They are the only people that's ever been into space and walked on another planet in the history of mankind. You would think they would be ecstatic and smiling, and I'm serious. I was just amazed when I reviewed this video. Some of the other top comments on this video. The one stall step for man, one giant leap for Hollywood, implying that it was staged. I'm sorry. I kind of think I'm probably 80% that it was staged now. I used to be 90%. I gave 10% that I didn't trust the government, that we probably went there. I used to be 90%. Yeah, we went there. There's no way they could pull this off. After watching this 3.5-hour video, I now am at 80%. We were all freaking duped. This was the greatest lie of the history of mankind. And I'm 20% that maybe there's some good explanations for all this shit, but I doubt it. Your body language never lies. Express your true thought. These guys' body language was just, I hope the panel, I sent the panel an email. Their email is thebehaviorpanel@gmail.com. And I sent them an email asking them to give their opinion, not on whether or not we landed at the moon. I just want their opinion on these guys' deceptive body language at a press conference at their first public appearance after landing and walking on the moon. And I hope they do it, and maybe a few viewers will follow up on that, or somebody knows anybody. Best zombie movie I've seen in a while. Those guys literally look like they were drugged, and just, their body language is just outstanding. Anyway, it's pretty funny that the top comments, one of the saddest moments in history, meaning this was the greatest lie. And if you look at these guys, because astronauts tend to be military background, proud, patriotic, honest, outstanding people. And to convince these guys to carry on this lie and this huge fraud, if you watch this interview, it's like it's eating and wearing on them. I mean, it's just... Anyway, let me get back to the other part. So this video sets up a lot of different things, and it sets up like, hey, they had all these problems, and they could not fix like 75% of the problems a year. They've been working on it for years, and they can't fix these problems. Then suddenly, 6 months to a year before the deadline, all the problems went away, and we were able to get there. Great point. During this time, there was huge budget and money issues. They were spending billions, and that was a lot of money back then, and they ran out of money really early, and they were trying to justify how to keep it. And if we didn't get to the moon, a lot of money was going to go away. Again, this leads me, look, in this video by itself, if I was in a civil court, I would absolutely hands down win a civil case against NASA if I went in there and said, I don't think you went to the moon, and here's why. And I'd put it in front of 12 juries, and I guarantee you at the end of the trial, I would win. Because in a civil trial, you only have to tip the scales. You just have to get a little bit of doubt and tip the scales 51% that you may be telling the truth. So without a doubt, in a civil trial, this video, the 3.5-hour video, not mine, you would win in a civil trial. In a criminal trial, you have to convince the jury beyond a reasonable belief and above a moral certainty. I think I could get a conviction in a criminal trial that we didn't go. And to me, that's a fairly high standard. And I've been there and done it many times. And I'm telling you, I'm just shocked after watching this video. I'm really in awe, and I'm sad that I felt like I was duped for all these years. And how can this great lie continue without more people knowing it? This documentation shows lots of government and NASA documents to prove that, I'm not sure what happened to the video cut, but they use they do a great job in this documentary. And this guy Webb supposedly resigns with no reason. And another astronaut that was supposed to be on this mission resigned and left NASA for no reason explained, just left. Very, very odd coincidences, if you want to call them that. But again, these things, because when I used to hear that the landing was faked, I'd be like, yeah, I heard about the shadows. Yeah, so what? The shadows didn't match. Yeah, I heard about, a couple of things. And I just dismissed them in and by itself. But remember, totality of circumstances. My audience, I'm always talking about making a criminal case, convincing facts. You gotta make the dots connect in order to convince people, in order to get a conviction, etc. So this video connects the dots if people would invest the time to watch it, but it's a lot of time to watch, so they won't. This is the other astronaut that quit right after the director of NASA quit and said, look, we're getting too close to deadline, we're not going to make it. The video lays out how public opinion was being influenced by cartoons and books and stories about how we were going to get to the moon. It became a huge PR campaign at that time. Lots of magazines, lots of things to get people. Everybody was bought into, we got to get to the moon. We're going to be the first. All the information on how we got there and all the plans of the space shuttle have disappeared. And the company that was contracted to keep all the diagrams and drawings and technical data on the building of the lunar module said they didn't have space to store it, so they threw it away. The greatest significant act of mankind, and they didn't preserve it. Later on, you'll hear that Google offered people millions of dollars to send a rover or some sort of unmanned craft to the moon, and they would pay them $5 million if they visited where the lunar landed on the moon. And right after that came out, and there were a lot of people getting ready, the government came out and made that area restricted and said nobody can enter the area where the lunar lander landed because of its historic value. Yet the plans that built the thing so engineers could look at it now and maybe figure out how they did it were thrown away because there wasn't enough room to keep it. Wow. I heard about this Van Allen radiation belt many times for the flat earthers or the people that don't think we went to the moon. And I was like, well, and that's another good thing about this video is it shows you how the debunkers try to debunk the things that are being said. So they give you both sides. They say, here's what NASA said we did. Here's what the people said why what NASA did is true. And then here is why we believe it can't be true. You make the decision. Really great video. But according to NASA, we flew this way around the belt and therefore we didn't have to go through the radiation. They actually asked one of the astronauts on tape what was going through the Van Halen belt like, and he goes, I'm not sure if we went through the belt. I don't know if we went that far out, because it's pretty far out. I think this is like 2,000 miles out or so. I can't remember. Anyway, meanwhile, while all this was going on, Hollywood was doing movie sets, Capricorn 1, and they did a movie showing how this could all be staged. Now remember, NASA even admitted in their own documents that they practiced and they made simulations exactly like it was going to be on the moon. So they had all the simulations and all the things that would make it look like an actual moon landing before we ever went to the moon. NASA admitted to having that. They cover the debunkers and the mythbusters that showed how everything that NASA told us is true, and then they show how the mythbusters got it wrong and how they're full of shit. Now, I've heard both these mythbusters are left-wing pro-government loons, so it wouldn't surprise me if they were in cahoots with the government, because most left-wingers are in cahoots with the government because they want more government. They think government's good. So, but again, they show both sides very well. This used to be my biggest thing on why I didn't believe it. I was like, dude, there's just too many employees that had to be in on this conspiracy. And in this video, they show, and it's very true, that not everybody has to be in it. A lot of things in NASA and space things are deep, compartmentalized, and only sections know. And in the military, same way, you know, not everyone knows every aspect of every mission unless you have a need to know and a right to know. And that's the terminology that the military uses for if you get a secret or top secret clearance. Just because I had a top secret clearance, it didn't mean I was entitled to everything that was top secret. I was only entitled to things that I had a need to know or a right to know, or I was involved in, or I was in a position where I could overhear or be exposed to those things. But, 4,000 employees in NASA, not everybody had to know. And I used to say that it was too big of a conspiracy. However, this video kind of lays out that it probably would be pretty easy for a few, probably less than maybe 100, maybe 50, which I still think is a lot of people to keep a secret. But you know what? There's just so much overwhelming evidence that points to deception and lies by NASA and the government. Another argument I used to go to say that, oh, it's BS, we win. How do we get moon rocks and we didn't go? Well, evidently, we found moon rocks in Antarctica before we ever even went to the moon. And they confirmed through, I guess, somehow that it was the same composite and they were actually from the moon. But what I didn't know is a month before we went to the moon, 3 people, I think one of the astronauts from NASA, made a trip to Antarctica, where a meteorite supposedly from the moon had impacted. Makes you scratch your head. Another argument was it was too big of a soundstage to be faked and there's no way to do it. They go into some great Hollywood actors and they show how a green screen can be used. It was really interesting how they show when you're using a green screen, you have like a straight line and you don't have a curvature and all this other stuff. So it's very hard to get a curvature. And then they show the background of all the moon photos with the straight line. And I was kind of like, all right, that's not conclusive proof, but it makes me question. Again, if this was a green screen, it would be flat, a straight line like this to where it changes from what it is. It was pretty interesting. They demonstrate how Hollywood used the green screen on large areas and in different movies and how easy it would be for the technology. Because a lot of people are like, well, they didn't have the technology back then. And I used to say, yeah, that sounds reasonable. They probably didn't. Well, this video shows they did. I believe this is actual NASA people working on the moon when they were planning and demonstrating different things to simulate different things. So we did have the ability. Again, in the simulator, they had the different ways to show what the astronaut would see and make it look real. I mean, NASA admitted to this. I already mentioned the Google Prize to put a lander on the moon, and then suddenly the government made it off limits. We call that a clue. This is where NASA said you can't do it. 2-kilometer radial distance over the site. No overflight of the landed spacecraft may occur. So the government now, we aren't even on the moon, and they're already making laws restricting movement on the moon. Perfect. All the photos they show are the actual photos provided by NASA of the actual landing. So they verified this. Also, any of the video footage that's used was used with the official footage from NASA that has been digitally restored and authorized for reprint. See, when this was done, nobody thought we would have the technology and the ability to enhance and do the things we're doing today. That was an oversight. And MSNBC, or MSNBS,
is taking steps now to preserve the steps they took decades ago on the surface of the moon. They are protecting American landing sites.
Wow! Government protecting us already, and we aren't even on the moon yet. Perfect. So I talked about the Van Allen belt going through it, and NASA said, well, we went through a thin part, not the fat part. But later, even today, people of NASA are saying we have a problem getting through the Van Allen belt, and we haven't figured that out yet. And I'm like, how can NASA say we haven't figured that out when 50 years ago they said we sent men through it? And now we're saying we can't figure out how to get through the Van Allen belt? This is a huge error in government coordination of the big lie. Again, when NASA was called out on this lie, they were kind of like, wait a minute. Before 68, it was very dangerous. Then when we went to the moon, it was not a problem. And now, today, it's back to being a problem and we can't send people through it. This is a quote from NASA. We must solve the challenges before we send people through this region of space. Newsflash, we were told you already sent people through. Clue number 42. This is one of the astronauts that flew through, supposedly went to the moon, I think on Apollo 12, and he says, I don't think we went through the Van Allen belt. This is an astronaut that's flying to the freaking moon for the second time, and he doesn't know if he went through the Van Allen belt. Freaking amazing. I mean, it's amazing how much this video brought out. And this to me was probably the most compelling, that I'm like, are you serious? You're really telling me this thing went into space? They do close-ups of this lunar lander on the freaking moon, and I mean, it's literally held together by freaking duct tape. From here, it looks kind of odd, but up close, this is the photo up close. I mean, look at the wrinkle, the buckling of the sheet. This is in space. Are you kidding me? I mean, we're talking about the temperature going from 200 degrees in the shade to 100 plus, 200 negative in the shade. I mean, this is the lunar lander? Are you kidding me? Look at the paneling of this spacecraft that traveled to the moon and that landed on the moon. I mean, I was just shocked when I saw the close-ups of these photos. I mean, it almost looks like they used Scotch tape to kind of keep this thing together. Remember, 200 degrees in the sun and negative 200 in the shade. And this goes to the shade and the sun on the moon. And this is what, I mean, this almost looks like PVC pipe. This is the external panel of this close up. Look at the, I mean, and the reason NASA said they used the tape is because they said rivets wouldn't work. What the hell are these? Are these not rivets? I mean, it's just, remember, at the time, that little machine with the Scotch tape and the rivets, $2.2 billion. Wonder where all that money went. Rick, it went to get us on the moon. All right, whatever. You can believe what you want. I don't care. This was another huge clue to me that you're landing on space with an engine that shoots out and you see dust flying, but yet there's no dust removed where the lander is sitting. This photo, I was just like, really? That makes no damn sense. Not only was there no dust blown away where this supposedly powerful jet fuel mixing together and causing the thing from crashing down to the moon, not only is there no dust blown away here, wait till they do a close-up of this joint, of this stand that holds this thing up. It is pristine clean. That was probably the most compelling video. There's no way. So we landed an unmanned aircraft on Mars called the Phoenix Lander, and it has all these jets to stop it from crashing, and you can see where it blows away all this sand. And then actual photos underneath the Phoenix shows where the dirt was moved and blown away from the earth, and all the sand and stuff was kind of blown, and it left this bare area where the jetpacks and the fuel and the explosion and the heat and the force blew away sand. This was on Mars, but on the moon this didn't happen. This photo right here is just freaking amazing. This is a stanchion that protected the landing on the moon. There is not one speck of dust, nothing on here. All the astronauts did is complained about how dusty and chalky, and you're going to see in their uniforms when they do a moonwalk where it's sticking and it's all powder all over their uniform. It's everywhere. But after landing with a jetpack assistant to slow it down, not one speck of dust. When I saw this video, I go, you got to be shitting me. There's no way. I mean, if you show me this video and go, is this a picture of what landing on the moon looked like? I'd be like, there's no way that's the picture. It's too clean. This is the actual picture provided by NASA, taken on the moon. Wow, I was in shock. This is NASA saying they lost the film, so it can't be examined that was taken on the moon. They've lost it. We've got all the live footage from other people, but the actual footage was somehow lost, and they misplaced it. But remember, when Google offered money to go fly there, suddenly we have to protect the historic value 50 years later. But when the original thing happened, we didn't have to protect the film or all the engineering diagrams and specs for the machine. I mean, when I was watching this video, I just kept rubbing my head like, how could I have believed this for so long and never questioned it? In this part of the video, they talk about how long it takes for communication to get from here to here. And it takes, I think, 1.3 seconds to get to the moon, and then it takes 1.3 seconds to get back. And during the communications, they show that they're answering on the moon, and we're hearing it in less than a second from the question, which means there wasn't even enough time for the transmission to get there. They've already answered it, and it got back. Huge question. Technical issue. They talk about the camera that was sending live feed that was mounted on this machine. Pretty interesting. They bumped the lander several times, and the camera shakes around, yet we never lose a signal. Yet, even today, if you do a live feed, you have to stabilize a vehicle with secure mounts, because if the vehicle shakes from the wind or is bumped, you will lose satellite transmission, and satellites are a lot closer to the moon. However, this camera on the moon, on this shaky thing, never lost transmission of its live feed. Wow. They talk about the compacting sand. Sand doesn't hold shapes like this unless there's moisture, and since there's no moisture up in space, why would it hold that? And it makes sense because they demonstrate it with sand, and they do it in a vacuum. I've heard the flag moved and there's no oxygen, and then it was explained that they hit it and bumped it, and that's why. They show several examples when the flag moves and no one's around it. Actually, they're both back in the lander, and the flag moves into screen, suggesting there's some sort of wind blowing up there. Great video. They show the actual cameras that were used on the moon at that time, and it's really amazing. They were really high-end cameras, very technical, and great lenses. Another great point is the film they were using. You can't even put film in a camera through an X-ray machine on Earth. Now, if you go traveling, they tell you don't put your film through the X-ray machine because that low level of an X-ray will ruin your film. Yet these guys had these cameras with no extra protection from gamma rays and all the different rays that are up in space, and the film worked fine and the pictures came out great. Wow. They show the internals of the camera, and when you have a camera that goes, they have photography specialists that say these cameras are so sensitive and these gears are so tight that they've had them freeze up, and as little as 40 degrees below zero, if they get really cold temperatures, the cameras don't work. Because when you get cold and heat, metal extracts or expands. Yet they're on the moon using these cameras in radiation in 200 in the shade, because they use the cameras in the shade, 200 degrees below zero, and the cameras work perfectly. They also show the film, when it gets that cold, will crack, because film has to maintain a certain moisture and flexibility. And when you get that cold, your film starts cracking and degrading. But none of those problems existed on the moon landing. So 200 degrees and light, and then you go to dark and it goes to 200 negative degrees. Those are huge. I mean, you can't even, my pipes freeze and bust and even expand. Water pipes expand. I was talking to Pat and he's like, certain valves, I mean, it's just amazing how, a 1/4-inch valve, I think he says, expands by 1/8. I mean, it's some crazy number. And we're not even dealing with these extreme 200 heat to 200 Fahrenheit. And none of the cameras malfunctioned on the moon landing. Shocking. They had all these expert photographers get into artificial light versus sunlight. And when I used to hear about the shading was wrong, I was like, yeah, I saw one shade wasn't exactly. That doesn't prove anything. Man, they make the point and drive it home clear in this video. This picture was pretty compelling. Remember, this video takes 3.5 hours because they have to bring you up to speed and make you a subject matter expert in a very short amount of time. So I've given you the Reader's Digest version without educating you. So it's very easy to write off the things that I've said as like, well, I could explain that. But when you understand the inner workings of a camera and film and the effects of radiation and how lighting and how the sun is a natural light and how all this is shaded, how do you get reflected light on a shaded dark side when your only source of light, if you're on the moon, is here in front and it's in the shade? I mean, it's just freaking amazing. So, and last but not least, I just want to go back to how I started this with the interview of these astronauts. Look at the faces of these guys and tell me if you didn't know and you had to say these guys were just indicted. Pick a choice. Is this a picture of 3 guys that were just indicted for a crime? Or is this a picture of 3 guys that just returned from the greatest act of mankind and the history of mankind? Which do you think this is a picture of? I mean, it's just outstanding. I hope the behavior panel really looks at this. All you guys, again, please go ask them. I've gone long, but look, I'm sorry, man. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't want to live a lie either. I'm glad my viewers called me out and made me research this, and I researched it, and with more information, I changed my opinion and I changed my mind. And I'm telling you, in a criminal court, I think I could get a conviction on this evidence that we did not go to the moon. And man, that's hard to say. Wow, pisses me off. But what do you expect? I mean, I don't put anything past government. All right, well, then that there. I hope somebody got something out of this. I'll wait for all the comments telling me what a loon I am now and how I'm a conspiracy crazy guy. Later.